I'm going to now invite everyone to our Friday evening talk. And so if you're new to us, then just to share that Inner Space, it's a meditation center that's based in Covent Garden. And we've been running well-being sessions in and around London for companies, charities, and for everyone for over 25 years. And so obviously currently all our events are running online. And speaker this evening is live from Australia in the most beautiful settings ever, Chrissy Mahoney. and so Chrissy is an actor with a long and successful career in performing arts. And then Chrissy's also worked in conflict resolution with individuals and organizations. But you're in Melbourne right now, aren't you, Chrissy?
I am, yes, very much, very much stuck here in Djokovic country.
Oh wow, we won't go there. So Chris is going to be sharing tools on fear, stop it from stopping you. And fear, F-E-A-R, so is it making you forget everything and run, or will you face everything and rise? And so Chrissy will share insights on how to change our relationship with fear, how to work through our fears, and become fearless and fear wise. I like that one. That's a new phrase for me, the becoming fear wise. And I love this topic on fear because it's got so many different layers, and I'm always curious in how it shows up in my life and how it seems to drive me. And it's always like there's always more to discover with fear. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Thank you.
So over to you, Chrissy, and welcome to everyone who, people are continuing to join us. So welcome to everyone. Over to you.
Thank you so much. And it's lovely to be here, when we can't travel anymore. Well, we're starting to, and I'm planning to, but it's just wonderful to be here in live, even though it's 5:30 in the morning here. And you're the first people I've spoken to today. It's great to be here from Australia, and this is a really raw topic, isn't it, at the moment, fear. And thank you for inviting me, and thank you for being here with your curious minds and open hearts to explore this topic. And you must be very interesting and wonderful people to even be tuning in on a Friday night when there's so many other things you could be doing, and that you are interested in exploring these different topics that Inner Space provides. And so the fact that you're interested in this topic and the fact that you're here is a sign that you're already engaged and are confronting this whole notion of fear that we experience in the human condition, in a human life. It's there right from the beginning of our lives, and it can be a great friend, fear. We go, oh, fear, it's a 4-letter word. Oh, no. It starts with F and it's a 4-letter word, and it's just traumatic. But it can also be a great friend of ours because it can keep you safe. It can take you out of danger. So it's an animal instinct, really, in a way, the whole notion of fight, flight, or freeze. But it came originally from the need to survive, the need to feel safe. But it's been distorted, as all things have been. All our emotions, all our love has been distorted. These are the one of the highest connections that we can have with ourselves and humanity is to love and be loved. And whereas fear has really become a destructive thing and a form of manipulation to keep somewhat the other, a population or a person, in a state of fear, gives you some form of control and some form of power over the other by keeping them in a fearful state. And so, as little ones, we have to learn to survive, don't we? We have to learn to survive in the adult world. We have to learn to survive in all the unknown areas of our life. And that can be quite fearful sometimes until we learn the skills, until we learn the language, until we learn the processes that keep us safe. Even at school, it's, you know, we're so afraid of, will I be liked, or will I get a good friend? Will I be alone? And even when we're older, will I be loved, or does that person love me, or will they marry me, or will I get this job? Will I be able to survive financially if I don't? And all these fears come to us and become second nature, becomes part of life, and we try and avoid it as much as we possibly can, don't we? We try and avoid fear where we can. And I look back on my own life now that I'm getting older, and you know, we were saying at the beginning, it's a beautiful thing getting older, because you have retrospect and you can learn from the years gone by. Well, hopefully, anyway, because I don't want it all to be a big waste of time. I want to come out of it with some kind of wisdom and experience. And you know, I always remember being a child when I thought, what do I want to be? Everybody was always asking, what do you want to be when you grow up? I thought, wow, growing up is such a big mountain to climb. What do I want to be when I reach that pinnacle of grown up? And I thought, you know, I think what I'd like to be is really interesting when I'm grown up. I'd like to be really interesting and wise, because I thought if I was wise, I would understand everything, and then everything would be okay. And so I think by making that pact as a young girl, I've grown into that. And because I find it in the times when I have brought in wisdom rather than fear, and inner knowing rather than fear, it's calmed my beating heart, and it's driven me more towards becoming an older person that is wiser or more interested and interesting than a fearful person who is snapping at people because I'm afraid, or I'm reclusive because I'm afraid of being rejected. So it's an interesting journey into fear, and even sometimes the cultures and religions that we grow up in make us fearful and implant fear into us. The whole fear of God, you know, the whole notion that God is the one that punishes. God will strike you down, and so it's very difficult to live a life feeling free, because it's like there's always someone looking over your shoulder who is going to hit you or strike you down, and so we lose that capacity to be free, to be childlike, to be curious, because what happens if we make a mistake? We'll be punished. And what happens if I fail? I look really stupid. And I look back on, as I was saying before, I look back on my own life and the journey I've taken, because I chose at a very young age to go into the acting profession. And people thought when you're little, oh, little girls want to be an actress, you know, but it was more than that for me. It was always trying to understand the human being, the people around me. I thought if I could act them, if I could be them, then I would understand them. And so I took this journey, I took this path into acting with a really open heart. And I'm glad I went into it with that open, curious heart, that there weren't lesser motives behind it of, you know, look at me, and wanting the approval and accolades of others. It was never about that. It was about trying to understand myself and others. And it was a great journey, and a very interesting journey, very insightful, to play another, to step into the shoes of another and understand what's going on in them and why they are like that with me. And so it always gave me a sort of form of compassion, I suppose, because of my developmental self learned how to stand in the shoes of others. And but so on one hand, there was this wonderful capacity to build a greater sense of being in this world and having a place in this world. And on the other hand, it ran parallel with this terrible fear, this unbelievable, breathless, traumatic fear at times. I had a chronic fear of auditions. So the whole lead up to an audition, I couldn't do enough preparation in order to calm the terror inside of me, and to stand in front of 3 or 4 people sitting behind a trestle table and feeling so exposed, and especially there's a form of shyness and thinking, well, they're just looking at just me, I'm here all on my own. And I felt so vulnerable. And because in order to represent the human spirit and the human being, there has to be a vulnerability there. And vulnerability really puts you at risk with fear. And so to be in a state of being vulnerable, which is a wonderful state, to be vulnerable means you are also open to possibilities. It means that there's an absence of arrogance and ego, but it's also a very precarious state to be. So there has to be an awareness that I am feeling vulnerable, or I am vulnerable here. And what should I do? Not to lose my mind in that vulnerable place, but to bring in that, the master part of the self, the strength within the self that can go, I'm in a vulnerable situation and how do I manage it? But I couldn't do that in an audition. It was really hard for me, because in rehearsals I was always wonderful. I was innovative and free and involved in my the responsibility I had to the character I was representing. But in an audition, it was more about me. And I used to, I was told to do breathing exercises. If you breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, it would finally calm you. And it does. When you really, really practice it and focus on it, breath is everything. Because when we become fearful, we either stop breathing, or we just grab a little bit and hold it, or it's quick, it's fast. It's like when someone is really panicking or really fearful, their breathing is really rapid, puffing almost. And so usually we say to a child that is panicking, okay, just take a deep breath, just breathe. So I tried all of those kind of things. And but this fear in me just always overrode everything. And I was always just so relieved when I walked out of that room. I remember going for a singing audition once for a musical called Into the Woods. And it was with the Sydney Theatre Company. So it was a really big deal. And I remember standing there and I had my song prepared and I started singing it. And it's because they want a chest voice, which means you're not up here in an operatic sound, but, you're more singing from here. And I was so nervous that I got into the wrong octave. And which meant that as the song climbed, the notes got higher and higher and higher, and so did my voice, because of my fear. And so I thought, oh no, I've got to hit this top note, and I don't know how I'm going to do it. So fear actually drove me to this top note. And the musical director stopped and said, okay, stop for a minute. He said to the pianist, what note was that? And the pianist said, that was a top C. And this musical director said, but you can't sing top C in your chest. Nobody sings top C in their chest voice. But fear had driven me to this pinnacle. It was just extraordinary. And of course, I didn't get the job because they didn't really know what I was capable of. I didn't represent myself appropriately. It was purely survival. This piercing note honestly could have shattered every window in the building. It was extraordinary, but I got it. It was in tune and I got it. But it was panic that drove it there. Panic and fear can make us lift a car off a loved one. You know, they say you get superhuman strength. So it's an extraordinary energy when it is harnessed for the good, when it is harnessed to represent us well. But when it's not, it's a very debilitating experience. So we all there's plenty of information out there on the internet about fear. And so because we have this gift of technology and internet now, for as long as it may last, we can research many, many things. We speak to each other in conversation around what does fear mean to you. So educate yourself, ask yourself about the response you have to fear, what brings fear on in you. That you are your greatest teacher. I'm just sharing my thoughts with you this evening. I'm just sharing my experience of fear. And but you ask yourself, when did fear start and why? How does it serve me? And so have conversations when you meet up with close ones, and see what you can learn from the conversation with yourself and with others, because it's a very, very, very important conversation to be having now. Because the world is in a state of flux. It's in a state of panic almost, because there seems kind of we can get the impression that there's no end to this pandemic that the world is in, this COVID crisis. And so what it's doing, and which I'm observing as a voyeur of humanity, of one who likes to understand what is happening to us. I'm a bit of a social scientist in that way, I suppose. But we're in a pandemic of fear, I believe. And so it's really hard for us to see a future, or we're living kind of like now and coping with what is happening now. And when we think of what might come or what will happen, we're gripped by fear. And so what does fear do? Fear has that unhealthy fear. There's healthy fear and unhealthy fear, but unhealthy fear has repercussions, and it can and it brings a lot of stress, and which is only natural, because we have forgotten our capacity to create and recreate, and it's a time for that. It's really time for us to be innovative and to think outside the box and to find new ideas. And fear gets in our way of this. It can make us small. It can stop us in our tracks. It can make us forget our dreams, the trajectory that we were on moving forward in my life, the hopes I had for later in my life or my children's lives. And there's the wonderment of now and the times that we're in, is that we have the capacity to rise above and to fear less, which is that beautiful two words, fear less, and become fearless. But how do we do that in reality? It's okay in theory, but we really need to, I believe anyway, we really need to hold ourselves, to have compassion for the self and the world and where we're at the moment, to I am okay, to when I really get my beating heart and my fear for the future and my fear for how we're going to come through this winter. There's this beautiful self-compassion, or the process of self-compassion is beautiful, and it's really worth investigating. the processes of self-compassion, because it has to start with you. There's a beautiful process that says, I am safe, I am loved, I am protected. So when I really do feel unsafe unsafe in my environment, I am safe, I am loved, I am protected. It's like a little mantra, it's like a little affirmation, it's like a soothing lullaby that we can use. I am safe, I am loved, I am protected. All is okay, I'm okay. So we need to come back into alignment with ourselves, because fear can throw us out of alignment. It can disconnect ourselves from ourself. And that is the greatest perilous vulnerability, is the separation from self. It can be the greatest loneliness, is the separation from self. Doesn't matter how exciting and wild my life is, there can still be that inner loneliness, or that feeling of not being fulfilled, because I have lost or left behind or disconnected from the precious, precious part, which is me, the center of my life, the pole that holds up the marquee, the center pole. And to lose that is really perilous, because then we become desperate for others to create a solution for us. I need the government to provide me with safety and security. I need my friends around me, and they're not around me like they were. We can't always meet up like we can. People are isolating, and isolation can be really a disturbing word. I'm isolated, but you can never be isolated from yourself, ever. It's who you came into this world with. It's who travels with you. But it's easy to feel that disconnection when we've lived a life that has been full of distractions and diversions. And a lot of our distractions and our diversions and our, the things that provide entertainment for us have been limited or taken away. If I'm in business, I've always run my business like this. Or I had this pathway for my family was this. So what do we need at times like this, when fear has gripped us? We need creativity. We need to be more innovative. We need to go back to the childlike state of play and the pleasure of creating and possibilities. So, because fear, the other result of fear, the other payback from being too fearful, as I said before, is stress. But what it does is it lowers the immune system. And at a time when we need our immune systems to be so strong and so intact and so like a fortress around us, we're in a state of fear or stress or panic or depression, and our immune system goes down. And the creative self keeps the immune system strong, because we go, wow, okay, like I have lived a perilous life. My income has been totally erratic. Work comes and it goes. Sometimes it's just, and as you get older, as an artist, it's even harder, because until older actors start dying off and then you get more parts. But it's I've lived a life of that. I've lived a life of being financially precarious. I've lived a life of being rejected, of going to auditions, wanting this part desperately and not getting it, being turned down, and knowing I'm out of work again. And so it's what it's done is the lack of, or the living a perilous life, an uncertain life, has actually built me a stamina and a strength that I'm really grateful for now. I'm really I'm grateful that I have a resilience and a stamina, and we all have it. We have all overcome things in our life that have been traumatic or have been where I've been vulnerable, or where I've thought, how am I ever going to get through this? And we have, and we do, and we can, and we have to nurture that in each other. It's not an airy fairy state anymore. It's not like going, oh, well, it's just, you're so optimistic. And I can't talk to a lot of people like this, because they don't want good news. They want to indulge in the bad news. So again, the fear is fed by those that we have around us and what I choose to listen to. How much of the news do I take in? How much of the news do I read? How much do I need to listen to the BBC or whoever to give me updates on bad news? I've got a friend who just scours every newspaper in the world, all the different newspapers on the internet, to read what's happening in different parts of the country. I said the other day, any bad news updates? Because I can't cope with too much. I know that about myself. And perhaps it's a weakness, whatever. It's just that I know myself well enough now to know that too much bad news does my head in. And I lose connection with my purpose, with my joy, with my creativity, my possibilities. So I just read the headlines. I basically know an overall of what's going on. Human stories are different. I kind of like if it's a well-written story of how somebody's been through something and come through the other side, then I love those stories. I love the whole notion of Desmond Tutu, who we've lost just recently. What an extraordinary spirit that was able to overcome fear of a fear of a kind that I've never been exposed to, and hopefully never will to that degree, apartheid. And so the human spirit can overcome, and we have to just continually find opportunities to protect it through what we take in, what we listen to, the company we keep. Do I have a connection with a divine, a silent, peaceful, whether it's called spirituality or a universal energy or a healing energy? There's on the other side of all of this is a kind of a calm. It's an energetic stillness that can support us, that can be like oxygen to the soul, that can calm us, that can reconnect to our potential, to our inner knowing, the wisdom that will hold us strong in a storm. We have to find and investigate and be curious. One of the great elements of creativity is to be curious, is to ask, well, it's like this, but maybe I can also do it like this. Maybe I can be more creative with my cooking. And by doing that, I save some money by not needing all these other ingredients. Maybe I can do more outside, more outdoors, in nature, that will nurture me, that will nurture the nature within myself. I mean, I suppose in my life, because I was representing the soul, the human spirit in the work that I did, I wasn't about representing the human being. I was representing who we are, the soul of the character as I was playing, the human, not the human doing of, oh, this is what we do, and oh, look, I'm sad, and oh, to actually portray human emotions on the exterior, but to actually go in, because I've always had that inner curiosity. It is really, it's really helped me to find what it is that the human spirit needs. And my human spirit needed to step away from the identity that I had carried for so long and get to know who I was. So I traveled for the first time in my life to try and connect to who I am. And by doing that, I lost a lot of work, and I lost my reputation that, oh, she's gone wandering. But I was on a search, I was on a pilgrimage back home to myself. And so that also led me into spiritual inquiry, into the whole notion of the human soul. and and a soul, like a parent's soul. Some call it God, some call it Yahweh, some call it Baba. All there's different names for this one entity that I find personally a stillness and a reconnection and a reassurance in when I become very fearful. To stop, to connect, to remember. In panic and fear, I forget. I forget myself. I forget my purpose. I forget the possibilities of life, the wonderment of life. I forget. But by finding a practice that you can contemplate options and possibilities to realign. That's what I meditate, but for me, meditation is an alignment. Sometimes it's not a sitting meditation. It can be a walking meditation where I can walk and contemplate, where I can walk in nature and contemplate. So I think we need to develop practices that support and nurture and empower my sense of self, my sense of being in this world, because that's when it's perilous. That's when fear grips me, when I lose myself. That's what happened to me at auditions. I lost myself. Instead of standing there saying, this is who I am, this is what I bring, this is what I can offer. Does it suit what you're looking for? If not, that's fine. And walk out with my dignity and integrity. And we were talking earlier about shame, just while we were waiting to come on. And I felt shame when I walked out of there that I hadn't represented myself as best as I possibly could. And that's all we can do in this life, is to live a life as best as we possibly can, and to represent myself in the moment as best as I can. But if I make a mistake, if I so-called fail, then in whose eyes is it? Failure can be such a great learning opportunity, rather than seeing it as a fearful thing that stops me, my potential. I'm fear of failure, fear of being left behind, fear of poverty, fear of being without. And these are real fears. These are the basic fears of humanity. The basic underlying fear, underlying need of humanity is to have shelter, to have food, to feel safe. It's a natural need and fear that we have, if that's going to be taken away. But at the end of the day, when you have a connection to yourself, nothing and no one can make you small. You'll find a way through. And the creative self is a great gift, because there's a wonderful psychologist called Moreno, and he developed or it's a social atom of how we're all connected. But he also developed something called the canon of creativity. And so he talks about spontaneity and the wonderment of spontaneity, and how spontaneity moves us through our life. It's like it propels us. Spontaneity propels us to move forward, to be spontaneous in the moment, and through spontaneity comes creativity. So when I'm spontaneous, I can be creative. I can, wow, this is a new possibility. It's a bit like, improvisation. To improvise when I don't know what to do, I'll improvise something. Like where our cupboards are almost bare, you improvise with what you have. But spontaneity, as it travels towards to become a creative, something that that comes out as a creation, what happens is, if fear comes in the way of spontaneity, the creativity never happens. The creation is left undone, because the spontaneity has been stopped by fear. And so what happens is it turns around, it either shrivels and dies, that spontaneous moment, that we never get to the aha moment of, whoa. So we turn around and go back to what's safe, back to the territory I know. Even if there's nothing there for me, at least it's something I know. It's why we stay in bad relationships. At least it's something familiar, because out there is unknown territory, and that is fearful. But that's that can play with the mind. If I can have some mastery over my mind, quarantine negative thoughts, quarantine fear at times when it's not serving me, quarantine it. We're getting a very strong understanding of what quarantining is now. Quarantine negativity and quarantine fear. Park it and investigate something new possibility. And then go back to it. If there's nothing there, then go back to the fear or go back to the negativity, whatever. But give it a go. Just try it. And I've seen it in conflict. I did a master's degree in mediation and conflict resolution. I was very interested in mindful mediation and how to be in the present, how to be with the conflict, how to be with the pain and the fear within conflict. And inner conflict is definitely an outcome of living in a fearful state. Or should I or shouldn't I? Will I or won't I? Do I or don't I? All this inner conflict of going on in the self creates conflict around me. And that ricochets, ripples, has a ripple effect. We've all heard of the ripple effect. And it escalates into that fearful state. And then in that fearful state, others have power over us. And there's a lot of protests happening here against the government, a lot of anger about vaccinations or not non-vaccinations, about lockdowns or not lockdowns. And so there's so much anger. And one of the byproducts of a lack of creativity is depression, anger, and violence. When our creative energy is stifled and shut down, when our world of possibilities is diminished, we become angry, we become violent, and we just get depressed. So if you've got any of those symptoms, then it's time to really revisit your creativity, your creative self. If there's inner conflict in the self, it's time to go still, time to find moments of alignment, be it meditation, be it prayer, be it being in nature, being at working the soil, being at assisting the climate that needs our help and our positivity. So much of nature is being affected by our fearful thoughts, by our fearful vibrations. So we have a responsibility to ourselves, to others in this our global family and this world. So it's not easy, I know. It's a big ask, but we've got all the toolkit within us. We've just forgotten. And it's meditation for me wasn't something that I learned. It was about remembering. We daydreamed as children. It's a form of meditation. We took moments out as little kids, babies. You see them gazing into space. And it's a peaceful kind of moment for them. You sometimes don't want to interrupt them. So it's we're all in this together. None of us are alone. We're all connected and interconnected. I can think of someone and they'll call me. It's just so beautiful. We are not alone. So there's no fear of that. And we'll find a way, because that's what the human spirit does. We'll come from the heart. We'll live our lives, and whatever is coming to us from a heart space, that's what the origins of the word courage is. To come from the heart, courage, kur. I'm probably saying it completely wrong, but you get what I'm trying to say, is to live our lives from the heart. If we get too much into our head, then others get into our head and we become vulnerable. So live your life from your heart. Live your life with curiosity, possibilities and creativity, and you will find yourself, you will connect with yourself. Others will get to see who you are in your authentic self, and they will feel courage from your courage. It's contagious, just as fear is. It's contagious. So decide what you want, decide and choose. So I look forward to sensing this new adventure that you're going on, to have victory over fear, to fear less, and to rise above it, into a higher consciousness, a higher state of thinking. To rise above it will always be there. Fear is part of being in this world, but to rise above it, to see it and know it's there, but it can't take my life away from me. So thank you for listening. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to investigate in myself this very, very important topic. And this isn't the end of it. It's just the beginning in some ways. And we all need to be reminded. You've provided me with this opportunity to remember what's important to me. And I hope you get the opportunity for conversations of this nature with others. So thank you.
Thank you, Chrissy. Can you please guide us into a meditation?
Yes.
And then there's quite a few questions.
Uh-oh. It will be an honor to just sit in that beautiful space with you. Thank you. And we are here together, sitting in this peaceful, powerful, courageous vibration that we have created here together. We are one, united. We are together and yet separate. And in this moment, I feel the energies that trouble me, that make me small, that make me forget. The energies that put fear into me, doubt, worry, concerns. I let them all drop away in this moment. I put them in a little basket alongside me. And I move away into a space filled with light, filled with hope, filled with the joy of possibilities, of newness, of wonderment. The qualities that have laid dormant within myself, the strengths, the wisdom, all of these gifts are awakening. are being called to the forefront of my life. My creative self, my childlike, creative self that filled me with possibilities and a joy that I've forgotten, but is now awakening. Like the light of early dawn, newness, love, kindness, where I care for myself. I nurture all that I am, not what I've become. The limitations that have owned me, I set them free. It flies away. And a gentle, loving kindness settles in my heart and shines a light on all that is possible, all that is life-giving, all that sustains.
Welcome back.
I don't know where I lost you, because I was in that place of silence in my heart and shining the light on possibilities. But I suppose it was a good place to stop, because the basket of things is sort of disappeared.
And it was really funny because I thought you had paused, and so I wasn't sure if I was going to be interrupting you or not. And then yeah, everything just froze and you went. So yeah, I'm going to go through the questions because they're really interesting.
Yes, great.
There's this one, yeah, let's begin with the first one. So how does one deal with the sense of failure in one's self? Maybe not even a sense of failure, but upset when you had great expectations of what you hoped, anticipated you would have achieved by a certain point in your life and felt fulfilled, more to your full creative potential.
It's a really, really good question, and thank you for it. And it's not an easy answer, and I think again you'll find the answer within yourself in time. But a failure, it's an interpretation, really, isn't it? It's what is the guideline to say, well, this is a failure or this is a learning opportunity? And sometimes we do fail, and we need the humility to acknowledge that and go, okay, I could have done better. Oh, I should have done better, but that's all I had the capacity to do at that time. And so there's that where we need to acknowledge, but we also need to know, we need to understand whether or not I need to take responsibility for that. Was it my doing? And so on one hand, acknowledge it and then learn from it. And that's the question, that's the investigation, where you go, okay, so my interpretation of that event was that I failed and I feel really bad about it. But what else came out of it? Because in any situation that happens to us, there are much more things than one dimension of response. Failure is only one. There's other possibilities in it. And so we also need a conversation of inquiry. Well, what did I learn from this? What has been the gift in this very difficult situation where I feel I failed, or I failed someone, or I could have done better? My life is absolutely littered with a pathway of feeling failed. And there are times when I've taken the wrong turn. And I have to be kind enough to myself to say, well, I interpret that as a wrong turn, or I interpret it that I failed at that. But on retrospect, or in time, or with inquiry, you can realize that it was actually a great gift. And sometimes in the state of humility is where we learn the great gift. When there's still a certain arrogance around, or ego around, I should have done better than that, then it's really hard to learn the experience. There's just that awful, sickening, gut-wrenching feeling of failure or sadness in the failure. So, so when we bring in the humility, we can either apologize, or we can acknowledge, or we can see that, but also it's really, really important in order to keep nurturing the soil of the self, to keep composting, throw back in the old stuff to be recycled into something nurturing and nourishing. Because there's definitely wonderment to be learned from every situation we find ourselves in. So I hope that answers your question. But have a conversation of inquiry with yourself around this. Yeah.
It's a question by a fellow actor, and she's saying how 47 years in the business, and I too auditioned for Into the Woods. I don't know how to cope with the sadness of my career deteriorating, and the sorrow that also brings fear, and career diminishing, and the sorrow that brings fear.
It's a hard one, and I wish we could have a conversation together, the two of us, about this. It's difficult. It's difficult, and I've been through some little storms and in myself around this, because it can carry it can feel like it's a lost dream, or you put so much of yourself into this work, and so when the work isn't there, then it's who am I? And so creativity and spirituality are actually very, very connected. They're in the same part of the brain. They exist in the same part of the brain. And so I have found that my unnurtured, or my unfulfilled creative self has also been nurtured by my spiritual path. And I've gone very deeply into it. And that in itself has had the ups and downs of the same as my creative journey, the losses and the gains, and the fears and the victories, the highs and the lows, the accolades and the critics. So it's kind of life, and we are the representatives of life. And so there has to be that in order to nurture all that wonderful years of experience, you really need to grow the garden of that. That's what I look at. I went and studied mediation and conflict resolution. There's wonderful work happening in the area of peace building and repairing communities after war and violence and trauma, using creativity, using theatre, using a kind of a form of playback theatre. But there's wonderful work going on. If you can Google using theatre for refugees, or for, this is where it's at now. I mean, it's hard when you've been a professional and you've been working in the magic and the majesty of it all. So it's never finishes. You've obviously made a choice, unknowingly or knowingly, you've made a choice. And so reinvent yourself, recreate yourself by using your creativity. And I haven't gone into peacemaking and peace building using my my theatre gifts or my experience and skills, but it's not something I have not entertained doing. So there's lots of opportunities out there now where you can do corporate work using. I work a lot with students too on doing role playing and simulations. Simulations are very powerful. I use my acting skills in a lot of ways. I've created characters for corporate dinners, hoax speaker type things. They're great fun, so you can, as long as you keep your heart open and it doesn't become sad and a sense of loss. So I don't know if there's any way we can reconnect again, but I'm always open to you for a Zoom or a chat somehow. I don't know how, but anyway, you're not alone. The world is full of, and at least, I know a lot that just turn to drugs and alcohol. So stay away from those if you can, because that's the illusion.
Another question is, I reconnected with an old friend last year. We met and since then arranged to meet up again, but they've now cancelled 3 times last minute. This makes me not wanting to either see them again or go out and meet new people. I keep thinking, what's the point? Because people keep rejecting me and letting me down. What are your thoughts?
So that friend cancelled at the last minute, did they? Yes.
Rejection. And yeah.
It is, darling. I really understand. And it is such an awful feeling of rejection. And we all, in the human state, all of us feel it, and all of us are subjected to it, and all of us are vulnerable to it. But it is an interpretation. It's an interpretation of my belonging. It's an interpretation of my existence with those that I know or those that are around me. But this is where we have to expand ourselves. Fear makes us small. Rejection makes us small. Fearful thoughts make us small. This is where we have to find processes that open up us to allow us to interpret. All the questions that have come so far have been really around an interpretation of loss, or interpretation of how I interpret my perspective. So how do I change my perspective on a friend that cancelled at the last moment? If we hear someone else's story, we always can understand more. We can dislike someone for years, and we hear their story and it brings an understanding. Now there's a backstory here with your friend or with other people. Everyone is carrying stories at the moment. And this is why arguments sometimes happen, because it's only in shouting and screaming at each other do we hear the truth. Do we hear if I was really having a bad day and I lost all my confidence and I felt I couldn't go out. Well, why didn't you tell me that? Why didn't you just say? Instead, I thought you were rejecting me. I thought you just didn't want to go. No, I really wanted to see you, but things had happened. I had this phone call and it really upset me. It took away my confidence and I just couldn't go out in public. So, I wasted all that energy or that pain or those feelings for what? And so that's usually 90% of the time, there's usually a backstory that I'm not seeing because I'm lost in my own pain, or I'm lost in my own feelings, which is only natural. You don't punish yourself for that, but keep a bit of perspective that there's another person involved here or other people. And so if you stay connected to why people love you, why you have friends in the first place, what are your qualities, and you nurture those, like you nurture a garden, like you water the plants that you love. Find opportunities to nurture that in yourself, and then you'll never be short of friends. Always nurture that part of yourself that is a sense of giving rather than needing to receive. Oh, I need this. If you're always having a consciousness of giving, then it will protect you and you will never be alone. When I had these traumas in auditions, I changed it around by having a sense that I am here to offer something. I am here to give, not that I need. In a needy state, we are powerless. It's precarious to be needy, but to be sort of, this is an indication there's something lacking that you need to nurture in yourself, because you're wanting it from others. And that's dangerous, because if they can't give it to you, then, I'm alone and nobody loves me. So don't give your power away to anyone or anything.
Another question on loss. I lost my husband recently and I feel lost. I feel like I've lost some confidence. Is that fair?
That's grief. We have to understand the process, the journey of grief. I'm so really offer my loving condolences to you for that. There's no words that can really and the loss of confidence is just a realigning after being in partnership. It's a realigning with the self, and that's a journey, and you can't put a time frame around that. If you've lost your confidence in yourself, it's because you've lost that connection to self. That's what loss of confidence is. It's who am I, and how can I move forward in this life without that partnership? Because we adjusted to each other for so long, and I consulted, or they consulted, and my purpose and my sense of identity was linked to that. And now that's been taken away. Your husband has moved on his journey, and he is on a journey, and he's focused on his journey. Now it's time for you to focus on your journey, and just small baby steps, little by little, and sit within the self, reconnect to the self, find some processes that nurture you. I tell you, going out gardening, I know it's cold and everything, but rug up, get out in nature, feel the elements, and be with yourself in different environments. And but it's the grieving process, and be kind to yourself. It will pass, as all things do. It will pass, and you will find something really wonderful waiting there for you, which will be you.
Another related question. I lost my mum this week, and I feel the need for social support, but fear being needy and too reliant on others. How do I reach out without this fear?
I hope your mummy left okay, and that bless her journey forward as well. She is now in the process of recreating. That's the greatest thing about death, is we are recreated. We move into the newness of possibilities, and that's where you will be moving into. You have had a death yourself. Part of you died, whether it was your husband or whether it's a mother, whether it's a friend. Part of us dies. And so with the death comes a rebirth, something new, so new possibilities. And I think, can you just reiterate some of the question again?
So I feel the need for social support.
Yeah, social support.
But I fear being needy and too reliant on others. So how to reach out without that fear?
Yeah. Well, I think I've always had a lot of trouble asking. I don't want to be a bother to people. So I understand that. But friends of mine have started saying over time, especially recently, just allow us to give, Chrissy, allow us, and it's been suggested that I should ask more, don't be afraid to ask. If you need help, ask. And otherwise they stop asking you, are you okay? They stop asking you, do you need support? Because they don't know what to do. And so sometimes that fear can come as a form of ego as well. I get fearful because I don't want to be seen to be needy, or I don't want to impose on people. I don't want to be a nuisance. Well, okay, it's possible that if you just, some people don't have the capacity to know when to stop, calling people, but you could ask your friends. You could ask, do you mind? Is it okay if I call you when I'm feeling like this? And will you tell me? Communication is very important at times like this. Will you tell me if I'm being a nuisance, or will you tell me if I'm asking too much? But it's I don't know if your friends or your social network are offering you support at this time. Hopefully they are. If not, then reach out to those that you feel are the best ones too. They may not be your closest ones, but they may be the most empathetic, compassionate ones, the ones who will, who will understand, maybe who will listen, or who will support. But try and diminish that fear by having the humility to ask, the humility to reach out. It's a beautiful quality, humility. And I find that with death, aging, illness, it really nurtures humility, because there's nothing I can do to change it, but I need to reach out. We do need social contact at times of grieving. So we either go in when we're grieving and we go, quiet and want solitude, or we need to reach out. So I would, otherwise there might be a support group for grieving, and there might be somewhere there that you can start to investigate on the internet if there's any outreach. There could be strangers, but you've all got something in common to talk about.
So she's written that they are offering support, luckily.
Oh, great. Then take it. If they're offering it, take it. Otherwise they get hurt. They feel frustrated that they can't help you. So thank them, make them a little cake or something, and just show that your appreciation. But so you're not just taking them for granted, which I'm sure you wouldn't have asked this question in the first place. I bet you have beautiful people around you that really want to. And as the girl that said that lost her husband, also, I'm sure there are people that really want to be there for you. Open the portal and let them in.
Well, we just want to hang out with you, Chrissy. There's still so many questions, but I think I'm sorry to everyone for not asking them, but time is just moving on. The morning has come in Australia, but we still want to hang out with you.
I want to hang out with you too. We should be a regular little team. But even any questions that you've asked that can't be answered, then please ask them of yourself and find an answer of sorts. It may not be the answer you hoped for, the answer that you feel, is nourishing enough or chewy enough for you at this moment, but keep asking the questions of yourself. Keep being your own best teacher, and don't let others take away your power or make you fearful. That's the greatest anarchy. All these people that protest here, I think, they're called anarchists there. The greatest anarchy is to keep the sanctuary of your mind sacred, and don't let anything take that away from you. Keep nurturing it, and bless you all, and stay in that realm of light and love and courage from the heart for possibilities and newness.
So everyone's just expressing that thanks, and from us too. Thank you, Chrissy. It's been wonderful. And so thank you, Chrissy.
Thank you all, and bless you all.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us and sharing. Everybody shared so openly and beautifully, and you shared with such warmth that, thank you. And everybody have a fearless and a creative week.